Hi, everyone. Today I wanted to talk about uh, my reflections playing Call of Cthulhu as a single player game. And just to define what I mean by that, I'm talking about playing Call of Cthulhu with one keeper and one player, because the last few weeks I've been able to do that with my wife and I have been playing, and I think I just wanted to share what I've noticed as the keeper in our sessions, and we also had the opportunity to play with a friend of ours for two players, and I think a lot of the advice is kind of similar. So a small group, and if you're a regular, Call of Cthulhu is my favorite role playing game. Much more than kind of like more fantasy adventure ones. And so, I wanted to talk about that. I think, in general, Call of Cthulhu is a role playing game that works really well with a small group of players. I'd previously been a player with one other person and the keeper, and that was really great. Worked really well. I felt like, because it was just two of us as players, there was enough space to kind of um, have like even meaningful role play that also was mechanically, impactful. Um, and in doing it with one player, I found that's also quite true. And as a keeper, it's good because I think the NPCs you run as a keeper with one player have to be a little better developed compared to if you have multiple players, and you are kind of the I guess the burden of the role play is more between the players versus player to keeper, if that makes sense. So as a keeper, it's fun that way if you enjoy, I think, role playing as the NPCs, and doing that. It's good, and that's one thing I've noticed so far. Um, Another factor I think more practically in running the game is you do have to, as the keeper, be more conscious of um, pulling punches. Or I don't really like doing that in a role playing game, but I think you have to be more conscious of the encounters that you do have, that they are not so unfair that you have it's just not enjoyable. So what I would say is, from the sessions I've run, we've had a couple combat encounters that turned into um, that were pretty difficult. Not because my wife's a bad player, or I miss, or I maybe made the encounter a little too difficult. I think the times we had very hard combats, it all really came down to dice rolls, and I think that's fair. That's more um, having, the dice are ultimately deciding, and it's not that I, as the keeper, design the scenario that was, like waves of bad guys, which I don't really think is fitting for Call of Cthulhu to begin with. But it was more on the dice. So, for example, in one of our sessions with a scenario I developed, we had a kind of a shootout between one bad guy, a human bad guy, and the character, and it did turn into kind of a deadly, very dangerous situation. But that was due to dice rolls, and not so much because of, I think, a bad encounter design. But I do think at the same time you kind of have to soften the blow with one player, because with one player and one playing one character, it's not really. I don't think it would really be fun to have to constantly have characters die or go insane, and then have to create a new one. That would be really, I think, too exhausting. That's a little different when you have a group of say 3 to 5 investigators, where they can rely on each other, and if a character does die, it's not as from just a practical gameplay perspective, it's not as burdensome for that one player to just roll up a new character while pursue in a little moment of downtime, or while the other players are continuing the game. So I think when you're doing it with one player, you do have to be conscious of the encounters, and that includes what um, the published scenarios, if you're using those, and there's quite a few one keeper, one player scenarios available, like on Drive Through RPG, and Chaosium publishes a few. The other thing I would say is it is good, I think, if you have someone you want to try a role playing game that has never done it before, like in my situation. I think Call of Cthulhu is good because you really don't need as many people, and like I said earlier, it works well with one player, and also the system itself, I think, is very elegant in that you're not really referring to the books constantly. The mechanics of the system are easy to pick up, and it's easy to explain to the players. I also think it helps that the combat in Call of Cthulhu is abstract enough that you're not getting into the nitty gritty with someone new to these kinds of games of like, okay, you're moving at this rate, and you stop at this square, or where you would maybe perhaps need miniatures. You don't need any of that to make a satisfying combat in Call of Cthulhu, which I think is good, especially for the sort of tone of the game. I think that having that more abstracted combat system works better. Also because Call of Cthulhu is not so is more investigation focused rather than combat focused. But like I was just saying, when you do have the combats, you need to be careful about not making sure the encounters are not inherently unfair, or having like really overpowered NPCs where there's no way to kind of overcome. And I think you do, as the keeper, when you have one player, even if they're an experienced role player, let's say. I think it is occasionally useful to remind them out of character, like, it's okay to run away. Like, that's a valid, I think, a valid response in Call of Cthulhu generally. Like, yeah, just run away, or if you can, obviously, if it's feasible in the scenario. Um, the other thing I think with Call of Cthulhu with one player is making sure that also the other types of encounters, there's different approaches that you could adjudicate as the keeper that are fair to the player. So, because if you have one player, obviously they have one set of stats to accomplish certain objectives. So, in that way, I found myself a few times allowing for, let's say, like rolls to intelligence rather than a specific skill or EDU. And I think the way you can handle that with one player is, let's say you need a repair skill. This was related to one of our sessions. I would interpret that as, okay, if you have the repair skill, you can probably do this, this task in like an hour of time within the game world to fix something, fix a generator, which was the case in our session, or something like that. But I think if you want to do, make it a little more fair to the player, that they're not completely stuck, say, okay, you can use like an EDU roll or an intelligence roll, that you could figure this task out, but it's going to take you longer to do so in the game time. And then as the keeper, in the back of your mind, maybe you're thinking, okay, so in the hours or whatever it takes to do the task. Maybe the bad guys are starting to make other moves kind of in the background, um, and do that kind of thing. So I think that's another thing of the non-combat encounters, making sure there's other approaches to that, that the player can do, and making that uh, clear. Um, so I think that's kind of the main idea is with I think 2 player, as I've discussed through this of 2 player Call of Cthulhu, is having flexible approaches to solving problems in the scenario that you can adjudicate, um, and not making it so overwhelming that one player can't uh, resolve the situation, whatever shape that takes. I mean, even if it's like you run away from the place and you escape. I mean, I think that's like a win in quotation marks in Call of Cthulhu a lot of the time, just making it out alive. Um, and then those are my general comments. I hope those were interesting at least, and then I'll go through some of the scenarios that I played, or that I ran, I should say, and go over them quickly, give some short reviews. So we played, first we played the Lightless Beacon, which is free on Chaosium, and this is a really nice scenario. I'm glad it's a free one. It's you can get a nice lengthy session out of it, and if you wanted to sort of continue the story, there's plenty of there's definitely a way to come up with your own kind of continuation of it if you wanted to make it more of a campaign. It's also so the basic premise is your boat crashes on this island, and you have to. There's this mysterious murder, and there's some deep ones involved, and you have to escape or defeat the deep ones. Really good, really nice scenario. Um, Pretty fair. If you have one player, it's not too crazy. And Yeah, it was really good. Also well laid out in terms of the book as the keeper, the booklet, I guess. It's easy to follow as the keeper. Um, Next one we played. This one we played with one other friend of ours. And this was good. So this is a sequel to the Edge of Darkness scenario. Both Beyond the Edge of Darkness and Lurkers in the Dark are continuations of I think of the scenarios in the starter set. So Beyond the Edge of Darkness is the sequel to the Edge of Darkness, but we played it just starting off, so we came up with a different introduction. Really fun, set in Egypt, so that's always fun. Nice Middle East setting, and the only thing I would say about this one as a keeper, there was nothing mechanically, I think, wrong with this scenario. It's just the layout of the book as a keeper was a little confusing. So like my wife and our friend would like do something as the player, and then I as the keeper would have to like kind of jump around the book a little bit to see what it said. And there was a few moments where like the conclusion wasn't, or the resolution of certain encounters wasn't very clear. But those are kind of small things. I think you could read this as the keeper and obviously kind of make it your own. That's kind of the whole point of these role-playing games anyway. So really good, and also something you could use as a basis for like a continued campaign in Egypt. I think it would be interesting. And this one, I think you could also run with one player quite easily. It wouldn't be that problematic to have just one player in this. But 2 was definitely useful. Last one is Lurkers in the Dark, and this one is expressly made for one player, one keeper, and this was a good one. I felt like it was a well balanced scenario, and pretty simple, but not in a bad way. Plenty to do with it. Less, I think, opportunity in this one to like sort of continue the adventure, so to speak. But a nice scenario. It's a sequel to the paper chase scenario that I think is in the starter set. So you continue, if you want to start and then continue with this one. Really nice. Yeah. So those are the scenarios. These are my thoughts on running it as one keeper, one player. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you all in the next video.